Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Secret Resume podcast, hosted by me, Melody Moore. In this podcast, we explore the people, places, and experiences that have shaped my guests, those which have influenced who they are as people and where they are in their work life today. You can listen in as we have a rich exploration of often unexamined and undiscussed, but very important aspects of their lives, or as I like to call it, their secret resume. My guest today is Minnikin. So welcome, Michelle. Really excited to have you here today. It's the beginning of the week of your book launch, so I'm sure you'll be very busy. So I'm very honoured to have you here. And I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you ever so much for having me on, first of all. So yes, my name is Michelle Minnikin. I'm an organisational psychologist and coach and author, which I'm not getting used to saying. So yes, I live up in the northeast of England, and I'm sure we're going to come across this, but I have written a book called Good Girl Deprogramming. It's a look at how society keeps women and girls behaving through the use of coercive control techniques and what we can do about it.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I am very much looking forward to reading it. And you just flashed a copy at me. It's a very good looking book. It's gorgeous colours. It's pretty. It's obviously the most important thing. I've just chosen the cover for mine, and it's really hard, I found, to make a decision. So yeah, and everybody I asked, they all had different opinions. Did you ask other people?
Oh yes, it was a mistake.
Yes, because everyone has a different point of view, which then made me think maybe really it doesn't matter.
No, we really fell in love with like a white cover. Then we realised a white covered book would get really dirty really quickly. And it's not going to, well, is it going to? I have many white coloured books. So yes, there was lots going into choosing covers of books. It was a bit
yeah. And then I suspect we probably overthink it, and that now that people buy them from Amazon and it's a tiny little thumbnail on a screen, actually it probably doesn't make much difference, but makes us feel better.
It does. Well, it does, exactly.
It's all about us. So let's jump back in time, like Doctor Who. Or does he go forward? I'm not sure. I've got down on my notes here pre-diagnosis, and this is pre your ADHD diagnosis is when we're going to start your story. So talk to me a little bit about that. What was life like at work for you, and generally pre your diagnosis?
So I quit proper jobs, quit work 2016, and I had an interesting career. So at one point I was a chartered psychologist and still doing admin. Because I was so rubbish at admin, nobody would give me the opportunity to advance because I hadn't mastered the admin yet. And the worst thing you can do to an ADHDer who didn't know they had ADHD was to make them arrange multiple interviews with multiple people in multiple locations. It was painfully boring, which made it even more painful. So it took so much effort and concentration to have that level of detail, which is really weird because I can arrange like 100-person assessment centre with multiple moving parts. I think there's interest in there, isn't there? Because people are doing different things at different times. So yeah, the ADHD is spotty. Sometimes it works in my favour and sometimes it really doesn't help. And it doesn't help because I was working in an open plan office. And the worst thing you can do for me is put me in an open plan office with people, lots of different people and exciting things happening, because I worked in HR and that's full of gossip and nosiness, let's face it. And so I was just like a meerkat doing my best to get through the day at work and then coming home, sorting my child out and then going back to work again in silence in my living room because I could actually concentrate because there wasn't multiple people around me, and then multiple lights and heat and temperature and cold and flickers, and oh yeah, it was awful.
And they were all distracting to you. Was it like the temperature and the lights and...
Yes. It turns out I'm really sensitive to cold in particular, and we all know that officers generally are colder, and women on a whole like things a bit warmer. So having to wear sort of multiple layers and taking a little blanket in because I was freezing, and then the sort of the over, like the glare of, you know, windows and overhead lights, and oh yeah. And so I suffered with terrible migraines, but I didn't know what this was, and the doctors just would just send me away, not really interested. But yes, there's the admin thing, the open plan office thing. However, sort of with those sort of really big struggles, they came like really big super strengths. So when things went wrong, I was awesome at fixing them and being able to talk to the right people. So it wasn't until I left a permanent job to take on a temporary maternity cover, because I met a chap who was going to be my boss, who actually kind of believed in what I was capable of. And then I got promoted 4 times in 4 years to a role that was significantly more suited towards me. So my job was to do the outward facing recruitment stuff, so speaking to the hiring managers and corralling them into doing what we needed them to do, and solving problems and looking at innovative ways to get the right people in. And that really sort of played to my strengths.
And what was it that you think he saw in you that others hadn't seen? What made him do something different to what others had done?
You know what you're not supposed to do when you go into interviews, and like be completely and utterly honest and truthful about that lack of progress and that lack of responsibility. And I think he just saw that I was being wasted. My potential was being wasted. And don't get me wrong, the job that he hired me for was very similar, but I had so much more freedom and autonomy. I was being involved in the interviews rather than just arranging them. So he saw that ambition, I think, in me as well, to do much more. So yeah, that was the start of my career at a engineering and construction firm.
And you said that the other jobs that you ended up doing were much more aligned to your skills. In what way? What was it about them that made them better aligned?
So I think about the same time the technology shifted, so interviews were able to be arranged. You literally put in the system that these are the dates that the hiring manager could do, and then the candidates would book themselves in. There's nothing worse than having to send emails and messages backwards and forwards. So that technology shift really helped, because it made things a bit more interesting. So that was kind of number one. But that freedom and autonomy to do things my way. So I'm one of these people that can always find a sort of a better way of doing things, like a more efficient, a cheaper, a faster way of doing things. It's like, why are we doing it like this? It makes no sense. But that was the first time that anybody said, oh yes, that actually does make sense. So yeah, this is completely nonsense. So we'll try it your way. So I had that freedom to experiment, to find ways of working that was suitable to me. So what I didn't know, again, at the time, because that was before I'd met the lovely Rob Baker, who wrote a book about job crafting, is that I was job crafting on the fly in that role. So I was able to put into place ways of working that suited me rather than being dictated at.
So that autonomy, but it also sounds like they were willing to listen and open to change. That sounds like a key element of that.
Trust.
Yeah. So they trusted you to do things in your way.
Yeah. It's interesting as well, the kind of the beginning of my career was marred by the fact that I was a very young looking, bubbly female whose defense mechanism for anything uncomfortable was humor. So my credibility was always being undermined by me when I was in an uncomfortable situation, being properly hilarious. I do it now, but look older now, so I can get away with it.
One advantage of aging.
I know. It's interesting, actually. I'm jumping forward 20 years here, but it has been fascinating when I've left work and started to work for myself, as well as being that, that 20 years older. People listen to me now. People take me seriously when they didn't. When I was working in organisations, which is really interesting information, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've been consulting for over 20 years, and I really feel sometimes for internal people who are saying exactly the same as I was saying. It's just because I was external, I was listened to, and that internally they weren't listened to, even though they may have been saying exactly the same. So of course, then the smart ones then use you to give the messages that they're trying to give, knowing, and it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because there's something about ego and knowing how to use a system that doesn't always make you feel brilliant if you're internal, but gets you what you want in the long run.
Yeah, it's the politics you have to, and the games you have to play to get things done in organizations. It's just so much. It's so wasteful, so much time, effort, and energy. It's like, oh, can we not just have like an honest conversation here? I've got clients who are really struggling in big companies, and I just sometimes wish for them to be able to have a conversation with like the HR director to say, it's not working out. You just pay me some money and I'll go away. You know what I mean? But there's nobody willing to have those conversations. It's frustrating.
Absolutely. Talk to me about how and then we will come on to this in terms of your book, etc. But early in your career, talk to me about how your good girl conditioning played out, as a young female in the workplace.
So I'm going to ask you a question in return, actually. So what happens at school? So girls are more mature at school. Girls do better in exams. Girls do better, they're more mature. They're held to bigger, higher standards at school. And then as soon as they go into an organisation, they are, lacking confidence, have this imposter syndrome thing. They need to be more assertive. What happens in that? Girls are more mature at school, and then girls clearly need rescuing in organisations. What is that?
I have no idea.
It's bonkers though, isn't it? So yes, I was a quintessential good girl. So school trained you to be able to adapt to authority figures, understand quite quickly what they need, what their preferences are, how to talk to them, how to deal with them. And we kind of learn that adaptability due to school. So I think when you're in an organisation, the power dynamics are weird in such that they give you money for being there, and they tell you how they want you to behave. So I just did that. I just did what I was told, with a internal voice screaming at me saying, this isn't the right way of doing this is just nonsense, there's so much better ways of doing it. And it took me, I think, Oliver, my little boy, was born when I was 30, so it was almost that was the time where I couldn't just do everything I was told. But yeah, I was completely lacking confidence and people pleasing to the nth degree. No boundaries. And it wasn't until I had a screaming ball of rage child that I just realized I couldn't do all of the things. So reducing my hours really helped. But then, luckily or not, during the sort of the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, that time when he was born. So there wasn't a lot of recruitment happening. So I was bored out of my brains at work, because I only was not made redundant because I was on maternity leave. So when I came back, there wasn't any recruitment happening. So I was in payroll, processing expenses, which, if you know anything about ADHD and our need for interesting, exciting, changeable, novelty, variety, was painful. It's like, why am I paying a fortune to leave my little boy in a nursery to do bloody expenses? And I was probably 7 years in from being a chartered psychologist as well at that point. Bonkers.
And was this before or after you had the better boss who
Before.
you got the before? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I remember them sitting me down and said, we really want to offer you the job, but you're leaving a permanent job that you've got, service, you've got a company car, you're a single mother with a child, with like a small child. Why would you leave a permanent job to come and do a temporary job? I'm dying here. Please just take me away from this place. So that was pretty much the conversation.
And I'm interested, as a fellow single mother, and I know you're not now, but at the time you were a single mum, how did you, it sounds like being a single parent made you establish some stronger boundaries.
Yes.
How else did it change things?
It made me more assertive, because it's not just for me anymore. And, quite the sort of the people pleasing kind of then transferred across to my son almost. So yeah, he was he defied all of the parenting books, because we didn't know at the time, but we now know that he was ADHD and autistic. So you'd read the books and like, oh, this instruction manual of how to get your child to sleep. It's like none of it works. So I always had to sort of trial and error my way through parenthood and figure out a way of work that worked for him and I. And he so it was all, my focus was totally different. Like work was just like meh. just a means. And I worked it out with sort of living and nursery. I worked it out. I would have been just as well off on benefits. Bonkers.
But that wasn't an option.
I would have been bored, but but I would have been, it's like I did a comparison, me on benefits and me in work, because of the sort of the high nursery fees. I would have been just as well off claiming income support at the time.
Do you think being a single parent made you even more focused and more, you know, your boundaries stronger, as opposed to having someone else to potentially share the burden, and I mean burden in the nicest way, of raising a child. Makes it sound terrible, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I still think yes, much better than what they were, but still not good enough, I suppose, because I was burning the candle at both ends, shall we say. But at least when I switched jobs, it was interesting and exciting, so that nourished me as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and meeting all of the new people and a much more open-minded, fast-paced work, and some really awesome colleagues.
And is it then harder to establish boundaries when you're really loving the thing you're having to boundary?
100%. Yes. Yeah. I loved the job, loved the people, loved what I was doing. It was really exciting. It was new, it was shiny. But it was a nice time though as well, because I didn't know then what I know now. So I was kind of blissfully unaware, I suppose, of the fact that I was heading towards a massive burnout. It took me ages to get there though, so.
And what was it that led to the burnout then?
So at the time, the organisation had been under numerous profit warnings, because for many reasons. This is probably the sort of hangover, I suppose, from the financial crisis hitting construction. And a new CEO came in with his team, and this is like ADHD plus being a chartered psychologist. Instead of having one change program, you know, we need to reduce headcount by X. We'll just do it once and we'll do it well. There was like 4, 5, 6 rounds of it, and it was just like, how do you expect anybody to get anything done when you keep reducing the numbers? And we were working 2-3 people's jobs at the same time. And my a different boss, who was equally as awesome, said that he'd had enough and he was going, and I could see the boss that was going to replace him, and I'm like, I can't wait for this person. Do not trust this person at all to have our backs. He didn't have any experience in what we were doing, so how he could think of managing us, I have no idea. So I threw a wobbly and I left too, and I jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire. Well, volcano, I suppose. It was not a good time. So I spent 6 months in another organisation, and then that was it. I couldn't do work ever again. I could, but not for people.
Just a lady of leisure now.
No, sadly not. Haven't won the lottery yet. But yes, I couldn't have a boss again. No.
So that was the point that made you quit, as you said earlier, quit proper jobs.
Quit proper jobs.
And that was 2016, did you say?
2016, yes.
Okay. So what did you do then? What you leapt out of the frying pan into the volcano, and then out of the volcano into
my own company. So interestingly enough, my first proper job after my master's was working for an organisational psychologist, and it was just him. So he had his own company. So my first proper job was seeing how you would run and grow and organise a small micro business, I suppose. And I was like, ooh, I want to do this when I grow up. And obviously, looking really young, I had to actually make sure I did look a bit older before I did it. So I set up my own business psychology practice and went by getting clients. Panicked, got a part-time job at the NHS as an organisational psychologist, which was life-saving, but hilarious. And it was half the money I was on before, but it gave me the healing time. So I did a year there, just writing psychometric testing, it wasn't the most exciting job on the planet, but lovely people, really interesting organisation. And it gave me that.
So she was pulling her face there, as people won't be able to see that.
It was almost a culture shock coming from like a consultancy into a public sector company.
Well, I started my career in the NHS, so I went the other way round.
Yeah, I was just like, oh wow, this is how things happen. So bearing in mind, I'd come from an engineering Lean Six Sigma, let's eliminate all waste, to the pace of work was just unreal. But I loved my colleagues. They were mint, and they kept me entertained, and the work was easy. I didn't really have to think about it, so it was really nice just to be able to have that alongside growing my own thing.
That's interesting, isn't it? That there's something about having an income that's not too taxing on your brain, but gives you, like you say, it was a lot less than you were earning before, but it was an income and it was security, whilst at the same time then being able to build your own business and pour, I guess, a lot more of your energy into that.
Yeah, it was interesting though. So we're not taught how to do businesses, to create businesses, to all of the different things that go into that. And I've always been sort of slightly rebellious leaning, mischievous human. And what I did is I set up a really boring business psychology practice, like a proper grown-up one. And I did that for 4 years before I realized that wasn't me. And while I can behave, and I have evidence of my behaving with the clients I've worked with, my natural lean is towards disruption and innovation and creativity. So I really struggle to sort of embody the brand or talk about the brand, so it was just like I got bored with that quite quickly too. So then I met my now partner when I was doing a thing called LinkedIn Local. I was the Newcastle person for that. So yes, I created a networking group and found a partner. Check me out.
So that's the answer.
Yes. Start LinkedIn Local. So he's going to hate me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I've said it loads of times. He has the most amazing voice, and he should have been on radio. He should have been a smooth radio producer, presenter even. And he said one day, I'd like to start a podcast. So we did, because I'm got very much a case of what's the point in talking about something? Might as well just do something type of approach, which I think is probably ADHD. And so we started a podcast, and we started working together. And then he came on board with the LinkedIn Local, and then we started volunteering for Action for Happiness. So we're doing lots of things for free at this point, and a very expensive podcasting habit as well. But it enabled us to sort of try out working together first. So he then retrained to become a Gallup certified strengths coach. And
so the podcast came first. Interesting. Before the business as it currently stands.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it was a different podcast. So you've got it's the Inspiration North podcast. So now James has turned that into a community interest company. So he goes into schools and helps children understand what their strengths are.
Oh wow.
And teachers. And so it's this kind of in that transition year 7 when they're just about to go to high school. Yeah, so he's working in collaboration with a friend of ours who owns another COC to do that. So that's what he's been squirreling away while I've been writing my book and not keeping total tabs on him, because he wasn't allowed. He wanted to do this for years, but he wasn't allowed to do it until our business Work Pirates was like properly established.
Until you were distracted doing something else, and then he was just waiting for that moment. Okay, yes. Brilliant. So we'll come back to Work Pirates a bit later, but let's talk about, you told me about a time where you had gone to an award ceremony, is that right, at the House of Lords?
Yes.
As I said, very fancy.
Fancy, wasn't it? So yeah, I was really excited to be invited. It was an International Women's Day thing. So every year, 100 female entrepreneurs have to apply for it, kind of get on a list. And so I rocked up to the House of Lords for my breakfast meeting, and this was just as the pandemic was about to start. So at that point we weren't allowed to hug people. And I don't know why that particular part of the whole slight rule. So in March 2020, and I have since learned that ADHDers attract other ADHDers like moths to a flame. So Anna Price was a lady who's also a competition / list winner, and she was talking, and I was totally drawn to her. She was telling us all about this. She wasn't part of the event, she was a participant. So she's telling us about her recent ADHD diagnosis, and barring the being really good at sports thing, it all kind of hit home. So she talked about how she was always told by teachers that she wasn't quite fulfilling her potential. She was predicted better grades than she got in her A-levels and GCSEs and all of this stuff, and it just reams of it. And I left that meeting reeling, actually, because I realized that this was the thing. So I've been backwards and forwards to GPs for years with, anxiety, depression, the odd bout of suicidal ideation, and they, offered me group CBT, and they tried to get me on antidepressants, but I just innately knew I wasn't depressed and I wasn't anxious. There was something else, but they weren't really that bothered about trying to figure out what it was. And so, armed with this knowledge, I went into pure research mode and printed off the NICE guidelines, of course, and basically created a business plan for my GP to say, this is what the problem is. Like, now you have to listen to me and you have to be serious. And luckily, I think the pandemic opened a lot of people's eyes to ADHD. So luckily I managed to sort of squeeze in quite quickly through the NHS right to choose. So I was diagnosed within sort of 6 months of going to the GP, which was 3 months after seeing Anna. So it was Christmas 2020, just before my 40th birthday, that I figured out what was wrong with me.
You said that you think the pandemic opened people's eyes to it, because it has seemed to have exploded into consciousness, I would say, particularly in adults.
Females.
Yeah, over the last few years. And you said, why the pandemic? What do you think happened then?
It forced everyone to stop and examine and look at how they were working. So there's a bit of like a pattern disruptor. And so some people really thrived during the pandemic. Some people absolutely loved working from home and being on their own. And other people didn't, like really badly didn't, clearly. And I think this is I think TikTok's got a lot to answer for as well. So this is when people started talking about it. So one of the things that my psychiatrist said, because we were talking about how I had quite a larger than average following on LinkedIn, for example. He said, please, there's so many people that are living life undiagnosed and are struggling, so talk about it. So we were encouraged to talk about it. So yeah, I think just more people were talking about it, and then it became a bit of a snowball thing. And then the newspapers jump onto the fact that there's overdiagnosis. It's like, no, there's been chronic underdiagnosis, especially in women and girls. Because I thought ADHD was a naughty kid kicking the back of somebody's chair in class and getting kicked out of school and ended up in jail, which, is the stereotypical male presentation. But I know lots of males now who aren't naughty, who are always good boys at school, but they just didn't have that, stereotypical presentation of it.
So how does a female presentation typically differ to what, like you, I would think of it being a naughty boy, misbehaving in the classroom?
So as far as I'm aware, there are 3 types of ADHD. So you've got hyperactive, which is that, inattentive, which is like totally my sister, like Dolly Daydream, and then you got combined. So I think my hyperactivity was internalized with my now knowing my good girl conditioning about, stay still, behave yourself in class, don't talk so much, all of this stuff. So my hyperactivity was like in my brain. So when you're like in a yoga class and the yoga teacher's trying to get you to sort of switch your brain off, it's like, if you notice a word, just let it float away on the clouds. If you notice a thought, let it float away on the clouds. And I was like, huh? My brain was never like that. My brain's like, it's a constant hailstorm of opposing thoughts. It's like,
there are no clouds.
There's no clouds. It's just hailstones and wind, and yeah, it was like a chimpanzee's tea party in my brain every time I tried to concentrate. So it's more that internalized hyperactivity and inattentiveness. So, and the GP was always like, you've got a degree and a master's, how could you be so like high functioning, which is a word that I was like quite happily headbutted her. I'm not a violent person, but high functioning, I'm like, and you've been able to have jobs, and you can, it's like, she just didn't get it, but she had the list, and so she could not, she had all the evidence. But yeah, there's so many stereotypes.
And that, you said that happened quite quickly then. So you went to your GP and they referred you on
NHS Right to Choose.
What's that?
So if a private provider of a thing works with any NHS trusts, I could then refer myself to it through this pathway. It's not very well advertised, obviously.
I've never heard of it.
No. So yes, I knew that one of the NHS trusts was working with a private company called Psychiatry UK. I was told it was going to be 3 years on a waiting list, so I was like, no. So I sort of found this option as the cheeky shortcut that nobody tells you about. But even I know now that it's going to take a while to get diagnosed even through that route, because there's so many people seeking diagnoses. So in some areas, unless you're at significant risk of harm, they won't even refer you now. The GPs have been told to pack it in. So, and it's dangerous having people wandering around knowing they've got this thing and not helping them get that diagnosis and that sort of self-validation, I suppose. That I think if it wasn't for jobs and modern society, I think ADHD is quite happy get on with stuff, because they're the they're the explorers and the adventurers and the curious folk. That I'm sure it was an ADHD that said, I wonder what would happen if I took milk from a cow, an egg from a chicken, some sugar and some flour, mixed up together to make cake. It's like not that's got to be an ADHD that was like on a curious kind of adventure. But yes, it's disabling because of society. It's because it's built for it's like normal in commas people.
Okay. Yes. Which is that's one of the perspectives on disability, isn't it? That people are not disabled. It's just society is not built to enable them. Yeah.
Yep.
What difference has it made to you to have your diagnosis? What's changed? How do you feel?
So when I got it, I had an unexpected response to it, which was like I was rather cross that it took me until the age of 40 to understand my brain. It's like no wonder I went into studying psychology to try and understand me and other people and why they did the things that they do. And it was almost having that lens of looking back through my life and looking through my family as well, let's face it, and just like how different would my life have been if I'd known this sooner, because it enabled me to put scaffolding support in place to enable me to do the things that I needed to do. So get the right people to be able to explain what my needs are and boundaries. But it took me a year to kind of get over the rage. But then after that, I put my brain to figuring this out.
What does the scaffolding look like?
So it's almost looking at those shoulds. So if you run a business, you should sit at your desk from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and then do some work on the weekends because you're so busy. And so, that's what you should do as a business owner. And you should just turn up every day, even if you feel like poop. And you should say yes to every single piece of work and all this sort of stuff. So understanding energy. So not only do I have the sort of energy of like a human, I also have the energy of a woman, which is cyclical. So depending what time of the month it is, it's just being really in tune with my body and knowing when it needs to rest, because before I would not allow rest at all, and I would drug myself up to the eyeballs and work through that, that time of the month when you're in absolute agony. I would just work because that's what we should be doing. So it was almost that sort of unraveling of all of those societal shoulds, and learning what works for me. So ultimate job crafting, pretty much.
That reminds me of I've just been reading Dr. Mindy Peltz's book about menopause reset, and she talks about rushing woman, being a rushing woman, and it just really struck home both for myself, but I think for pretty much all of my clients. Really,
it's like that cult of busyness. So knowing when I need to stop, when one of the benefits of ADHD is I can do like a week's worth of work in the morning, but then I get so tired that I need to take the rest of the day off and put a Disney movie on, and being okay with that. Leaving things early because I've had my fill. I would never have done that in the olden days. But now I'm just like, right, I'm done. I'm off. See ya. And being able to put myself a little bit towards the top of the queue.
Do you find that easier? And I ask this because I do, now that I own my own business. Because the guilt that I would feel doing something like that And I don't mean the leaving early. I mean the, taking some time off because I'm tired, or, just not working the 9 to 5, doing things in a different way. I would have felt judged and guilty for those things previously. Now I've got no one to judge me.
Help myself.
Apart from myself.
Yes. 100%. I just felt that there's this kind of, it's such a weird power dynamic, isn't it, if you think about it, work. And there's such a, what's the word, there's a focus on you being available from 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, or 8:30 till 5:30, or whatever horrendous, and we can't, as humans, we did not evolve to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day. We literally didn't. We can't concentrate for all that time anyway, so the amount of waste that goes on in organisations is bonkers, isn't it? So
well, of course the answer to that is having a standing desk.
For either, we're not built to be on computers. No. We create within those moments of boredom, don't we? Never in the history of innovation has an innovation workshop made us be innovative. You know what I mean? It's like,
yes. I feel about 1,000,000% more innovative now. I'm not working as hard. Literally, I have so many ideas, it hurts. And I feel, that because I'm not a rushing woman anymore.
No. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah. The world is not built for actually getting the best out of us, the working world, I think.
No, it's not. It was almost like men designed work for people in factories. And it hasn't really changed based on what we know as, occupational psychologists. They haven't changed work. It's still that same kind of that Taylorist approach to productivity and profit.
Well, I think it's even more so because in a factory environment, or in that sort of manufacturing environment, the shifts are likely to be fixed and there's a break, and many office environments, people work through their lunch, work into the evening, people work very late, and there's no way they're doing their best work in those times.
No, it's what I don't know. I always forget what the principle's called. Sort of the time it takes to do a task will expand or shrink into the amount of time you've got to do a task. You are never more productive the day before a holiday.
Yeah, that's true. Let's move on to what led you to ultimately write your book, and that was a conference that you were involved in. So tell me a bit about that.
So, as I alluded to before, I kind of was a bit cross when I found out I had my ADHD diagnosis, and I had just finished the Tara Moore facilitator training course. So Tara Moore wrote a really good book. And I'll plug it at the end because you're going to ask me that question.
Save that one.
I save the answer to that one. And so I'd finished doing that. I was in coaching because of the sort of the ADHD stuff and getting to grips with this masking thing. And then I was invited by a wonderful lady, Elizabeth Lemke, to be one of the sort of co-creators of an empowerment. It was an L&D conference, but a part of it was in the Women's Empowerment League. So a day was going to be devoted to us and empowerment. And so we had loads of meetings to talk about, what women needed, what they want, what we can do to help. And I was going sort of as a parallel, going through this whole what was me, what was ADHD, and so kind of unmasking that ADHD, becoming more authentically myself. But then I kind of came up, almost crashed into this other thing. I was like, what is this? It's like good girl conditioning. So the way that we're trained to be nice, be kind, be share, not be too much, not be too ambitious, etc. And it was just that's right timing that we were having these conversations, and I was like, I want to do something about this good girl conditioning thing. And I went off and did my research and found some work that was done in the 1950s by a chap called Albert Biderman. So he was a social scientist working with the US military, who were very distraught by the fact that so many prisoners of wars from the Korean War were converting and defecting to China. And Americans couldn't quite get their head around why would anybody want to leave America and go and live in China. And they thought that the Chinese must have had some kind of magical brainwashing machine. And Biderman and his team interviewed loads of prisoners of war to find out what was happening, like released prisoners of war, clearly, to find out what was happening. And they came up with a taxonomy of coercive control. And I just remember sitting on the sofa on Wikipedia, just like reading through this, and I just thought, oh my goodness, this is it. This is how society keeps us behaving. This is how we are trained to be good girls. And my head almost exploded. And I rather excitedly took this back to the gang, the Empowerment League ladies, and they all loved it. And so I pulled together a talk. One of the ladies helped me kind of get my thoughts in order. We did a one hour talk, and it went down really, really well. And then Elizabeth Gilbert's a lady who wrote a book, and it's all about kind of ideas come to you and they will stick to you and won't leave you alone. And this was it. It's like literally, oh, so that went down really well. This is really interesting. I could talk about this for days. And so it just wouldn't go away. So I was like, I'll write the book, okay? Ideas vary. So that was in 2021 autumn, and then 2 years later, here I am with the book. So my coach at the time became my book wing woman, and she wrote the foreword, and she was my editor of the book. And it's really funny because, and then I went with her publishers as well. So I'm not going to wave it around because it's underneath a pile of things and it'll be really noisy, but we've literally got book cousins now.
So your book is about...
Oh. I was like, are you going to finish that sentence? Or do you want me to? That was an ADHD moment, wasn't it? It was very much going... Oh, that's okay.
Somebody say it.
So it is, as I said at the beginning, it's a look at how society keeps women and girls behaving through these coercive control techniques. So I've modernized them, given them like less scientific names, but it's the Albert Biderman's framework that I use. And I didn't want to write a book that said, this is good girl conditioning, and this is how you can, overcome that. Here is your Michelle's 12-step process to overcoming your good girl conditioning, because that just winds me up, because we're not in the same place. I don't know anything about any of my readers' lives. So it's more of a case of, this is a thing. These are some examples how it manifests, and these are some questions you can ask yourself to figure out for yourself. So the book has been written in a non-self-help way, but also to be read in groups of women as well, because one of the ways that society keep women and girls behaving is this the technique of social isolation. So we are taught that women have to be like super independent and not ask for anything and not be a bother and not even, not ask for help. And there's a quote in the book, and I cannot for the life of me remember who it is off the top of my head now. There's not something along the lines of, men are terrified when they see groups of women hanging out together. I'll figure out who that is. I'll just have to read the book. But it's that. So the book's been written for gang/covens of women to read together. And I also created, so another tool is keeping women tired, so strategic exhaustion. So knowing this, I was like, we don't have time to read a whole 288-page book. So I created a quiz to find out which parts of the book that people needed to read. So yes, so here's the 2 or 3 bits of the book you need to read, and then you can get on with your life. You don't have to read the whole thing. So yes, so that's what the book's about.
So in the book, is there a link to the quiz? Is that how it works?
Yes. Link to the quiz. I've also created a sort of a Good Girl Rebellion Gang handbook. So women who want to do this work can do it together in a safe way. So yeah, giving people the resources to be able to go out and do it themselves and come up with their own things, because it's not my job to fix everybody.
You're creating a movement, though. It doesn't sound like a book.
No,
it's a movement.
That's the hope. That's the hope.
I know it's not out yet. It's out at the end of this week, but you've had people pre-read it. What's been the response so far?
So I did ask a number of my colleagues, friends to read it, and all of them did. And I was like, if you want to do like an endorsement for the book, that would be lovely. So I ended up with like 20 endorsements of the book. So when the book designer put these bits in, there was like pages and pages at the start. I was like, well, this looks daft. It's like, Michelle's book's brilliant, it's great, it's like blah 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 blah, and then we get to the book. So what I asked her to do is put half at the beginning and half at the end. So, and then like I've written a line, it's like, this, the endorsements carry on at the end, so this book is literally sandwiched in love.
Oh,
so one of the things with ADHDers, and it's not every ADHD, but it's certainly the case for me, is this concept of rejection sensitivity. So I am super sensitive to sort of criticism, and so no matter what happens, the book is sandwiched in love. So at least I knew that 20 coaches, clinical psychologists, they all liked it. It started off rubbish. I did make some of them read it at the beginning, and I got some really good feedback. But that's what happens. Your first draft of anything is going to be pants. And quite frankly, I could have polished this for another 6 years.
Yes.
But it just needed to get out in the end.
Yes. Yeah, I feel the same. Mine's literally about to go to the what's the word? Person who makes it look like a book.
Designer.
Yeah. It's going there this week, but the same, I could go and go. I would never stop.
Done is better than perfect.
Exactly. Brilliant. Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to ask you some of my regular questions that I ask to my guests. The first one is, what's a title or a strapline that you'd give to your story?
I think it's just keep going. Just keep going. Just keep swimming. Just like Dory from Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming.
Love it.
I love Finding Nemo. Anyway.
Me too. I showed that to my daughter. My dad has dementia, and that was my way of explaining it to my daughter. I was like, he's like, Oh, it's Dory, isn't it? Not Nemo. Yeah, so it's Dory who's got the memory that keeps losing the memory. I was like, Opal's like Dora. And she was like, oh, okay. It was really straightforward. Second question is advice to your younger self.
Stop caring so much about what people think of you, because it's none of your business.
Nice. I like that a lot. And the third one is, you hinted at this earlier, your book recommendation. Almost let the cat out of the bag.
I did. I'm hopeless. So I'm gonna be greedy and pick two. So number one, is Playing Big by Tara Moore. So it's all a look at how women doubt themselves and some really good techniques about how to stop that, buck it in, and play big in their lives. And then the second one has to be More Pirate by Sam Conniff.
Well, I think we're pretty much done here. So thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely fascinating. I, hand on heart, know very little about ADHD, and it's just been really fascinating to hear things from your perspective. And also, I am really looking forward to reading your book. So thank you very much. This podcast is brought to you by Liberare Consulting, with editing provided by Hawkins Social. If you enjoyed today's episode, why not click on the subscribe button so you are the first to hear about new episodes. We look forward to welcoming you back soon.